fast, die young.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Now, this is a slightly unusual time for us to do an industry interview. We normally do them in the evening between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. But my next guest is a jobbing actor who never stops working. So, as you know, we have to work around other people's schedules. I've got a wonderful co-host as well with me this evening, somebody who's worked on a couple of the Outcast projects. I'm just going to bring her in now because she just looks so much better than me. Everybody, Charlene Aldridge, known as the Shab. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
Today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, at relatively short notice, and let me just put up the correct thing. There we go. Okay. Well, we are starting this 15 minutes early because our wonderful guest has to leave at 6:45. He's got 50 self tapes to do, and that's just this evening. But without any further ado, I'm going to bring in an actor who's also a good friend of mine. We've collaborated on a couple of scripts. He's attached to do a couple of my projects, and I think the first time we met was probably about 11 or 12 years ago. And I'll just say before I bring him in, he was just one of those people who was just really supportive of my work from the word go. He read one script of mine, and then it was like, if you've ever got anything to send me, just send it to me. I'd love to read more. And he's attached himself to like 3 or 4 of my projects, none of which unfortunately have been given the funding yet. But it's that kind of generosity that really spurns on creative people like me to write even better scripts. So, you know, a big thank you to him for doing that, because it does mean a lot to people like us to be supported in that way, especially writers that are considered quite far down the food chain in terms of the industry pyramid. Without any further ado, here is our wonderful guest, Nabil Elouahabi. Did I say that correctly?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you, Shab. Good to be.
You too, mate. You're right.
Very nice introduction. That's very kind of you, brother.
Well, not at all. And I just really wanted to, if I hadn't said it publicly before, you know, there's a core of, I would say, established actors that have been very supportive of my small career compared to some people. And you are, you know, there's about 15 of them, and you're one of those. And I do really appreciate it. But this is all about you tonight, so let's get on with it. Now, you started acting, would it be fair to say, sort of in the mid to late 90s? Is that right?
That's about right. Yeah.
And do you want to just tell us a bit about how you got started? You know, what were the kind of key influences? And then I'll get onto your early work, but maybe talk about, you know, where you went to drama school, or if you went to drama school, those kinds of things.
Well, okay. So casting my mind back that far, let's see. So it's a slightly cliched story, but basically I was at school and I'd failed all my GCSEs, all of them, not one. And I suddenly thought to myself, this is crazy. They've got it all wrong. I'm much smarter than this. And I just realized I was I'm diagnosed with ADHD. And, you know, back then it was very much, you know, I couldn't stay still for a split second. And, you know, couldn't focus, or more appropriately, was easily bored. And I think that's the difference. It's not like I could focus. But if something didn't interest me, I wasn't really, you know, my attention went. So what happened was who became my drama school teacher, my drama theatre teacher, she'd seen me and she said, would you like to play Danny Zuko in Greece? Now, of course, that speaks to every, you know, 15-year-old boy's ego. You know, me, Danny? Yeah, of course. So I said yes. And I kind of fell in love with what I would call the culture of it. You know, suddenly you rehearse it. I was interested. Suddenly I had something to do. I didn't want to leave. I got there early and left late. You know, it was like suddenly I was engaged. I went on to do a GCSE, which was the only GCSE I've ever got an A+ for, and it just felt like from there I went to do a BTEC instead of A levels. Then basically my love for I remember the plays that I did. I remember the 2 plays that I did. The first one was I did a speech out of Stephen Burkoff's Metamorphosis, which was amazing, obviously very theatrical. And then I remembered a play by Jim Cartwright called Road.
Road.
Yeah,
Which character did you play in Road?
I can't recall. It's so long ago. But what I just remember, it was just couldn't verbalize then what it was, but it was like I was just I loved the idea of exploring different characters, not to sound pretentious, but that's what it was. And it's something that we're hardwired to do. I mean, like, we play, that's what we do, and then we forget to play.
Yeah.
Would you say that, is it a fair description to say you're considered to be a character actor in the industry?
I would say that's a fair that fair characterization. But that's how I kind of got into it. Now, it was a long journey back in those days in the late 90s, mid 90s. I went to uni, I went to do theatre studies, and it wasn't really for me. It was very academic. And I wanted to just keep getting up and doing stuff. So then I remember I deferred for a year. And in that year, the fringe circuit in London was really thriving. You'd get this kind of breakdown of parts that you could apply for.
I remember that came like the red sheets.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember. I used to get that.
Yeah,
that sort of 95 till about the mid 2000s. That ran for, didn't it? Production
right.
casting review.
Production cast, and I would apply for things, and then I remember, my cat's trying to escape. Come back in here. I remember it was just before September, so I was due to go back to do my final year, and I got offered this three-hander play, and it was going to be at the Old Red Lion Theatre, which was a very good fringe venue. And
I've directed a play there, actually.
Right, so it was known for new writing. This play was called Swingers by Ashmead Sohoy. Now, Ashmead is now back out writing again. He'd gone into education for a while. I saw him quite recently at a friend's, mutual friend's funeral, God rest their soul. And what had happened was Ash had written this play, and it was set at Feltham Young Offenders Institute, where they send the boys to Borstal, basically. And it's about the spike in suicides among young men.
Right.
And it was a play with me and who is still a very dear friend of mine, Ricky Harnett.
From Rise of the Foot Soldier. Me
and Ricky were Selma, and it was about a prison screw, an officer, who basically put us together as some kind of game way to try and antagonize the other. It was basically about abuse, and that prison officer was played by another very successful actor now, Geoff Bell, and Geoff's a kind of household.
Yeah.
So Geoff played the officer, me and Ricky played, and Brian Croucher, who's an actor, was on EastEnders for years, and then went on to write and direct.
I remember Brian. I think he's passed away now.
Still around.
He played Travis in Blake 7, didn't he?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check for that.
Carry on. I'll check quickly.
Yeah, the Brian Croucher. And anyway, so in the end, I did this play, and I didn't go to uni, and I had a choice just to keep working. And I remember I got my first agent there, a woman called Dulcie Houston. I remember she was quite grand, and she had some offices above Sloane Square Station. And it was like literally like a kind of character. She'd have pearls, and she's an American as well, so she was kind of grand,
very grandiose,
very.
And she always used to wear like massive pashmina scarves that were like almost like a dress.
She was very sweet, but she was very grand, and she had this grand office. And I don't quite know what she was doing with me, really. But anyway, the point being is, I got an agent, and then I kind of just slowly started working. Now, here's the thing: back in the 90s, there weren't that many actors of color. I hate using that phrase, but that's the kind of low resolution description, but we kind of understand what that is. But then she and I was doing lots of new plays. I was very interested in new writing, and I was lucky enough to just nick a couple of TV bits, like, you know, a bit here, a bit there.
You did the Bill and Casualty and those kind, London's Burning and that sort of stuff.
All that early ticking boxes, and who, again, funnily enough, I did Casualty, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was Casualty with Martin Freeman. Me and Martin, we were part of a kind of gang. Martin is still a friend of mine. I was with him over New Year's, and we were reminiscing over that. I'm thinking about how many years that was. And obviously, he needs no introduction in that respect. He's done very, very well.
He's fantastic. He is.
Sorry?
He's fantastic, Martin Freeman.
Yeah,
and I've also heard a really nice guy on set, which is always nice to hear.
I don't call many of the people in the industry like friends, but he's a friend. He's a friend, and he's a solid, good guy. So, but the point being is, we just ticked away, like just kind of hammered at it. I mean, I was very much wouldn't let the grass grow around my feet. You know, often people say, "Oh, what should I do?" And I'll say, "Everything. Just throw yourself in." So that's how I cut. So I didn't go to drama school. And
same here. Didn't either.
So you kind of, I mean, you did a bit of drama in terms of courses and B-Tech and whatnot, but you didn't go to a drama school.
So let me clarify what I mean by that. I didn't go to one drama school where I just
studied drama.
Taught it at that time. And I just didn't have the wherewithal. I really should have, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, things like classical work where you really do need some support and some guidance and some mentoring. I don't have that. You know, my dad was a chef, my mother was a chambermaid. We were like working class North African immigrants, you know, and I was the first born in a you know, of the eldest of 5. So my family were not really au fait with that world. They were like, don't know what that is. We have no kind of opinion. They were very sweet, and they said, look, if it makes you happy, do it.
They must be proud of you now, though, surely.
Oh, I mean, I mean, I guess, you know, the proof is in the tasting of the pudding. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's an interesting thing, but, you know, I've not needed to do anything else. Not to say I haven't, but I've mainly supported myself as an actor since I was in my early 30s. So I'll be turning 50 in a few weeks' time. So.
No way.
Oh my God, you're even younger than me. That's not allowed.
I wouldn't have put you in the 50 mark. No way.
But the point being is, I mean, yes, they, you know, but like everything, you know, there are ups and downs, and you know, it's stuff that we know. I mean, a life it's like that, isn't it? It's not just like, and you know, one has to. Yeah, I'm very grateful, and I work. So
well, let's talk about some of the early stuff. I mean, you got cast in a part in The Sum of All Our Fears, which is you know, that's a big iconic picture. It probably wasn't the best of the Tom Clancy movies, and I'm a massive Tom Clancy fan. I read like The Hunt for Red October like viciously in about a week. It's such a good book, and you know, and the Sum of All Our Fears, I actually wanted to watch again to prep for this interview, because I wanted to see your role, but I couldn't find it on any of the platforms without sailing the high seas. So I decided not to do that. But tell us about how that casting came about and what was your role. And
well, there's a funny story to that. So at this point, I think I remember I was with an agent, a woman called Janet Malone, and Sharon Henry. Sharon still works as an agent, lovely. And anyways, I remember I got this casting, this role, and it was to play this Egyptian officer, this Egyptian border guy. He was advertised as somebody in his 40s. At that point, I looked so young. I must have been like, I don't know, I probably was about 28, 29. And they wanted 40, 45. And I was really young looking, like a boy.
Yeah.
And it was something called Aquarius Rising. This was the film. Okay. And I get this casting, and it's this guy called Phil Alden Robinson, who's the director. Now,
he directed Field of Dreams as well. For those people, wrote and directed Field of Dreams. For those people,
he directed Field of Dreams and later directed Sum of All Fears. But before this, about a year before Sum of All Fears, I get this this audition for this thing called Aquarius Rising, and it's opposite Harrison Ford. It was 1996. I remember because I was in America at the time. And I get this role, and it's a lovely role. It's this really obnoxious Egyptian officer, and what's his name? Harrison Ford is looking for the love of his life, who was at that point cast as Kristen Scott Thomas. Anyway, this is all great. I'm thinking, result.
Yeah.
America, I get a call saying the film's folded. They've lost them. I'm like, oh, okay. A year later, I put myself on tape, and I get the Sum of All Fears. And I'm like, the name rings a bell. And it was him, right? It was the same director. Now, here's the interesting thing. They flew me over. I remember at that point, I was living in a hostel, literally. And they said, send a car around. We need to fly you out to Montreal for a costume fitting. I'm like, all right. I remember they flew me out on the Saturday, and I flew out on a Friday and got back on the Monday. Yeah. I've never flown BA first class. It was like a different experience. I ate everything there was to eat and drank everything there was to drink. It was like, boy, just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Anyway, well, why not?
Yeah.
I get on set and I say to Phil, Phil, do you remember me? And he's like, no. Because you cast me for, and he just cast me twice. And he didn't connect the dots.
Oh.
He said, oh, it must just be your face. So the role in The Sum of All Fears, and again, it's a really weird thing to think about now. What they said, can you, they put me in prosthetics, and I was basically a nomadic farmer who finds this undetonated bomb, handles it, and gets sick and dies. But
That's right. I remember the role now.
And he is the pin. He is the one part of the story is kind of crucial for the plot that he reveals to Liev Schreiber's character, who gave me the bomb, or all this kind of stuff. But here's the funny thing: they cast me, but then they said, we want to put you in prosthetics, and basically I was in prosthetics for like 4 hours a day, and they made me fat. Like they put. Now I think, why don't you just cast a fat guy? But this has been a punctuation of my career all the time, because in the role they wanted him to be this kind of guy in his 50s, old fat. But they cast me. I was like 30 at the time, and
something that stood out to them. That's why it don't matter if you're like you don't need to be fat. It's acting. If you're the one that they see that's good for the role, then they don't care. They'll do anything to make you look that way.
Yeah, I think you're right, Charlene. I think you're right. But it's a funny thing. You look back and think, well, this is interesting. Why have you spent? But anyways, so that was how I did that, and it was a great experience. I mean, to be, on a Hollywood movie of that magnitude. I mean, it's a huge machine.
Yeah.
But it was great, and I absolutely loved it. I did a week and a half on it. We filmed in Las Vegas, and they're really fond memories.
That's brilliant.
I mean, was there like a marked immediate difference of, say, rocking up to work on Enders every day and being a guest actor on a feature film like Sum of All Our Fears, in terms of things like quality of the catering, your lodgings, your car?
Yeah,
did you have a trailer? I mean, what were the differences like for you on that?
Well, look, that was that was the first big kind of commercial job that I. So it was a situation where they definitely, they looked after me, and and on those films, that's what they do. They've got the money to really throw at actors. I mean, that's why. I mean, look, the per diems alone were. You think about people like Ben Affleck, what they were on. I mean, like millions. I mean, I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, that was a $70 or $80 million film. So it was very at the time. And it was and again, all these things were about being kind of, climatized to these different environments. And that's what it's about. It's about, because I think really the advice I would give is it's about how do you respond on set? When everything's said and done, and it's just you and the camera and you and everybody's the whole thing is everybody can do what they can do when they're not in the ring.
Yeah.
Ring, that's what you like. So you kind of get paid to hold your nerve. That's what I would say. You get paid to remember your lines and not F up, basically.
Yeah.
Just like deliver.
What kind of speed did Phil Robinson work at on that? When he was shooting.
He was pretty kind of thorough. We had a good rehearsal. There was a brilliant actor called Colin Farrell, Canadian actor, very good actor.
I know you mean.
It was a who's who of actors in there. I mean, God, who else? If I'm not mistaken, Bill Sadler was in it. I think he was in it.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman.
Kieran Hines. I
Yeah.
remember that having a coffee. Well, in the bar, and I was having a coffee. It was just like, it's a very high profile experience. It's divorced from any reality because, of course, it's the first time you get picked up. I remember the guy that came to pick me up. It was hysterical. It was hysterical. He came, as I said, I was living in a hostel at the time, and he basically, the buzzer goes, I go downstairs, and there's a guy in a stretch limo Mercedes, with a hat on, like a proper like chauffeur. And I remember just saying, "You got a hat? You got a hat?" And he opened the door, and I was like, "Please don't do that, dude." I said, "I find it very uncomfortable. I'll open my own door." But it's a different world, obviously.
Yeah.
Now that isn't the norm.
No, indeed, it's usually one extreme or the other, isn't it?
Exactly.
Is often the case in our industry. So, we lost you for a second there. That's all right. Just a second. So, I mean, you went on from that to you did a spot on EastEnders. Am I right in thinking you did about 160 episodes? Is that right?
I did it for a year and a half, and that was a very interesting experience. It was there's a missing beat here which I think is worth mentioning.
Sure.
So Some of All Fears, and then I also did 2 Michael Winterbottom films.
Oh, which ones were they?
In This World and Code 46.
Okay, interesting. I've met Michael Winterbottom.
He's
worked with him.
A lovely fella.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, my girlfriend is saying she doesn't have the keys. I'm gonna have to let her in. Give me a second.
That's all right. I'll just take you out for a second, and we'll just fill in. Yeah. So let me while the Beetle dashes to get his keys,
isn't it? It's interesting.
Already quite interesting to hear an actor of his caliber living in a hostel and then going to work on a Hollywood set of Some of All Our Fears. That's quite.
I mean, do you know what? There's so many A-listed actors out there that have had that start.
No, I know. Absolutely.
Some of them have been on the streets and stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Just let her in.
No, that's quite all right.
Very lucky. I was kind of nicking a couple of films. There are 3 things I would stand by as a truth. One is I did, going back to the drama school thing. I didn't go to drama school, but I was obsessed by doing courses. I did a lot of Lee Strasberg courses, a lot of Uta Hagen, any courses that were about, I'd do them. And I had a regular course which was on a weekend by this. I say this affectionately, but he was a bit of a mad American dude who did a lot of the Lee Strasberg stuff, and he used the American school, the method school. And back then it was all the rage. It was very, very kind of it was all about kind of method stuff. Yeah. Anyway, and I did a course every week. It was a 4-hour thing, from 12 till 4, and then you'd get up and you'd do a speech or you do scene work. So I guess what I'm trying to say now is I was always in the gym. I was always in the gym. I don't just people talk about wanting to be actors and then don't actually act.
Yeah.
It's as redundant as saying I want to be a writer, but you've not actually written a damn word.
Well, you've got to invest in yourself, really, and you have to do that. I mean, did you attend any workshops or anything?
Loads of workshops. That's something I'm very interested in. I've always been, even now to this day, it's something that I find that there is also, it allows me a bit of freedom. There's no stress. If I'm doing
I'll tell you what, you should pop down to the Outcast one Monday night. We'd love to have you there as a guest.
I'll come down. Where are you guys based?
We're in Highbury and Islington, 6:30 till 9 every Monday. Just when you've got a free Monday night, let me know.
I'll definitely come. I mean, it's rather
we won't tell the other actors because I don't want them turning up just because your glamorous self is attending. But we'll keep it quiet, and then the people that are there will just benefit from your experience. I think is always good.
So I guess what I'm saying is I was always very interested in the practice itself. So I was kind of obsessed with it, really.
It's like a muscle, isn't it? Acting, like you said, you were down the gym, and I've heard that
Yeah.
analogy a lot. You've got to exercise it. You can't not act for 5 years and then expect to be as good as you were 5 years ago. I think you've always got to stay proactive.
Also, the thing is, it's like you're able to internalize it, so you're not thinking about it. It's like, oh, you just drive, right? It's so in your body, right? That's what it should be like when we're acting. Like, you get to a point where you take the lines in and you're just talking and responding, and by that point, you're because you've done some of the process, you've done some of the what I call the kind of the prep work. Going through, what am I saying? Why am I saying it? How am I saying it? What do I want? All
and stuff.
Start sculpting it, and then you forget about it.
I mean, you mentioned Michael Winterbottom earlier and 2 of his films, and I thought I'd seen nearly all of his films, but I don't think I'd seen the first one.
In
that
this
you
world,
mentioned, he's a very gritty, visceral, human minutia. He's not quite in the same depths as, say, Mike Leigh or Ken Loach, but he's on the same shelf as those guys. I think
I would consider Michael to be a friend now. I mean, still in touch with them. Ocean Films, who was run by him and Andrew Eaton as a kind of pair. I mean, they made some amazing films over the years. Andrew Eaton's one of the nicest, most generous, sweetest, supportive producers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And his reputation, I mean, you just IMDb Andrew Eaton and you'll see the stuff he's done. But that film, In This World, I was the only actor in it, because what he was doing at that point, he was using digital. I think the cameras were like P50s, they're called Sony 150s, I think they were called, and they were handheld and small. At this point, he was making a film basically about what used to be considered, what was called previously the Silk Road, from Afghanistan through to the UK, which are now being used as a human trafficking. And then what he's done is him and the producers gone to the refugee camps in Pakistan and had found these young boys and they paid them and employed them to basically do a film improvised about that route. And one thing that Michael wanted was he wanted it to be very, very kind of real. So it was main. I can't remember who. It might have been Frank. I can't remember who the writer was, but anyway, somebody who kind of did a skeleton script, and then what had happened was the character that I was playing, he was using real people. Okay.
Yeah, I get. Kept it very organic.
But one of the guys who I ended up playing got deported, like in real life. So they were like about to film and said, we need somebody who's going to be an actor, but they can't look like an actor. They've got to be so naturalistic. And so I was the only actor in this film. And we went to Calais and we filmed everything, quite kind of guerrilla. And I think it was one of the most moving films, and it follows these 2 boys, and it's called In This World, and it's really worth
check that out.
I haven't seen that actually, but I remember it being talked about. Now
it's beautiful, and I think it won Best Foreign Film or something at the BFI. Amazing film. But also off the back of that, we all became like, Revolution had a real kind of feeling of, they kind of created a kind of culture of almost like a hub. So they'd have these dues, these kind of get-togethers every month where you come and meet people, and it's very much kind of like a family vibe, and it was really
interesting.
And well, in fact, when like for instance with Code 46, his next film, he just said to me, look, do you want to do it? I didn't have to audition for it. He just offered it to me, and we filmed that in China, and that was kind of amazing, working with Tim Robbins and Samantha Morton. And weirdly enough, I don't know how, but myself and Tim Robbins remain friends. And every time I go to, I see him, and like, he's a sweet guy. He does his theatre stuff, and as well as big kind of Hollywood star of back then, he has a theatre company down in downtown LA where they really do kind of conscious work, as I would call it. Michael was very much in Revolution, very much part of my support network. So much so that even when I got Eastenders, and I had actually not wanted to do EastEnders at the beginning. I wasn't really, and I don't mean this in any negative way, but I've never been, nor was I ever really a soap person. I've never really watched or enjoyed them. It's just not for me. I find them too what's the word? They like.
Anyway. No, I get it. I'm not a big soap guy either. I watched Dallas for a couple of seasons in the 80s, and I did watch Enders probably late 80s to 90s, but that would have been my
So I didn't have a dying ambition to be on the soap. No disrespect to anybody on the soap, or just wasn't. Now, part of the reason was I was working as a bartender most of the time, so I never watched TV. I was never really drawn into it. It wasn't part of my culture. But I ended up going in for the last casting of a workshop period that they did. They offered me the job, and and I did it, and it was very interesting because I hadn't really fully appreciated the power of soap in terms of.
You couldn't travel around on the tube anymore for a while when that was on.
No, absolutely not. It was so full on. It was frightening. I'd never experienced anything like this because, I don't mind being recognized for my work, but it's like, it felt like very much it's because you're on TV. It's like you're on TV. And I think somebody once said this to me. It was not somebody, an ex-agent. An agent said to me that she could walk down the road with Shane Ritchie, for example, and he would be mobbed. And she could walk down the road with, God, like a movie star, and they wouldn't. And the reason being, you have to pay to go and see a movie star. But you don't have to pay to go and see Nabil Elouahabi if he's on EastEnders. So you become public, is what I'm trying to say. Right. And I think that was the thing that surprised me the most. I couldn't quite get around it. But I met some wonderful people there. We're still some friends with some people there. There's some great writers. And it was definitely an exercise in quick thinking, learning scripts like on the day, like learning sides. It was very much you're active. Yeah.
Were you on the show when Lindsay Coulson was on it, who played Patsy Palmer's mother, Bianca?
Carol in it, didn't she?
Carol Jackson. She played Carol Jackson.
No. And here's the other thing, which is going to sound slightly ungracious or ungrateful, and it's not meant to be that way, but it's just a fact. I did 100 and something episodes, 60 episodes. I've only ever 2 episodes ever that I did.
You've only ever seen 2. You know what? But I know loads of actors that don't like watching themselves in anything. That's quite common.
Yeah, don't
like it.
Yeah. So, like now, weirdly enough, now I do just to check what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Before it would fill me with anxiety. So that was my kind of soap enter into soap.
Well, I want to move on to a different topic, if I may. And we discussed this earlier, and I know you gave an interview about it in the Guardian, maybe also in the Garden. I mean, that you've done quite a few Terrorist of the Week sort of parts. One particular show that I want to talk about is The Path to 9/11, because I actually thought that was very good. I think I recorded it when it was on television.
Hang on, look, hang on. Don't go. I've got.
It's going to bring back a prop.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hey, look at that.
Is that DVD?
And these are all the DVDs. There's a story to this, but I'll let you finish your line of.
Well, actually, I'd love one of those if you've got a spare one.
Yeah, I want one too.
Yeah.
I recorded it. When I say I recorded it, I recorded it. VHS.
Well,
and I don't have any of my VHSs anymore.
No, this is DVD, and there's a reason why I've got them, and I'll go into that when we.
That correct me if I'm wrong, but it was was it just a film, or I think it was a mini series, like 3-4 episodes. Yeah, and it was about the plot leading up to the attack.
Yeah,
and it was quite well researched, and it was pretty good, I thought.
It was great, and it was like one of my most enjoyable and engaging experiences. Cyrus Nowruster, who's the writer and one of the producers, we're still friends, which is why I still have these. Whenever I see him go to LA, we've got some other things that he's trying to get off the ground. Now, this is the story which was loosely based on the 9/11 Commission report, which tracks at the kind of years between 1993 and 2001. 1993 the first World Trade Center bomber played by me, was Ramzi Youssef, who's a Pakistani/Kuwaiti national who was a chemical engineer, electrical engineer, engineering. He studied here in Wales, lived in Knightsbridge, was a playboy, had lots of fun, and was also one of the first guys to really master nitroglycerin liquid bombs. Now, correction for one of the things that you'd mentioned. The only terrorist I've ever played is Ramzi Youssef, and I only played him because he was a real life guy. Every other kind of role, maybe, to be fair, I think maybe in Strike Back I played some kind of nefarious sidekick to a character. I'm very careful about the characters I play. I won't play any, let's just put it this way, any Allahu Ackbahs. I'm not, and you know, I'm happy, and in fact I enjoy playing real life people. So you know, I would have loved to play Uday Hussein, Saddam's son, or anybody who's real. I love to play Hitler. Do you know what I mean? Like I love playing characters, and Ramzi Youssef was one of those guys. He was an intriguing. I had the transcripts, FBI transcripts of. And I interviewed. I met the guys who arrested him, and who had him. So he was a very intense dude. At no point did he ever. In fact, in the court, those things are from the transcripts. When he's nothing apologetic about him, he is totally and utterly ideologically driven. He really hate the United States and everything they stand for, but also anybody else. I mean, he tried to kill Benazir Bhutto. He tried to kill the Pope. I mean, he was a psychopath, man, and he's still locked up in the Supermax in Colorado, I believe, or somewhere like that.
You had some great research for that role.
Yeah, and it was important. It was really important. You know, this was especially contextually. It was very much, you know, if I'm not mistaken, we were even given letters for when we were traveling in and out of we never filmed in the US, but we were traveling because it was so, at that point, you know, it was, the profiling aspect was so intense.
Yeah.
So being, you know, having a Muslim name, being of a certain section, it was like, you were you were going to get pulled. But I love that thoroughness of it. And in fact, what's interesting about it is that it was, the Clintons, and this is fact, the Clintons shut it down. Now, there's a reason for this. This show,
that's covered in another drama series, actually. That their ignorance of the facts and them missing the boat.
Here's the interesting
government for you.
Well, here's the interesting thing. They ended up, they screened it on ABC. It was like $100 million TV show. You know, Harvey Keitel, Donnie Wahlberg. I mean, that really good.
You had Amy Madigan in there as well.
Some great actors. And what happened was, because they knew Hillary Clinton she has an ambition to run for president. If they had televised the show, which in the show it highlights the fact that it was under the Clintons that they let Osama bin Laden escape, they felt damage her ability to win the election. And so the Clintons leaned on Disney. They screened it once and killed it. That's why we've got so many DVDs, because you can't get it anywhere. And in the UK, I think FX may have. I think it's a really good show.
Yeah,
sounds it.
Yeah, very good.
I think it's interesting what you said about actors like playing real people and that. I mean, if, for instance, you get Tom Hardy when he played Bronson, he actually met him. He actually went to the prison and visited him.
Yeah,
and he could get the authenticity and stuff. And I hope in the future I get to do that as well. I'd love to play someone real life. So
not play Bronson, but someone else.
Well, no, not Bronson. Obviously, I'm too short for that.
You've got too much hair, I think.
The thing is, I mean, research. It's funny with Ramzi Youssef, for instance. I remember, I've still got the folder somewhere. Yeah. I really love seeing pictures, and I remember his arrest shot, kind of when his mug shot. I remember he was like just stood there, like really arrogantly.
Yeah, I've seen the photo. I know the one you mean.
Like it was so powerful. And I love that. I love that kind of. So I do enjoy playing real people.
Yeah.
So I mean, but talking around the issue of being typecast, because it is a thing. I mean, you know, there was a time where if you were seeing films in the late 80s or early 90s and there was a Middle Eastern villain, you know, it was going to be one. It was going to be one of four actors, one of whom would be Art Malek. You know, Ovi, I forget his first name, would be another one. You know, bad guy from Iron Eagle. How many times have you been sent or offered something where you've gone, no, I'm not doing that? A lot, or?
No, I mean, I kind of nipped that in the bud quite quickly. Listen, I'm going to be honest. I've never been put in that really, well, you know, like everybody can talk a good game, but the reality is this: if you get offered £1 million,
sure,
right, and you think, you know what, this is going to set my family up, you're gonna. Some people are gonna. Because I remember Art Malek. I said to Art, I worked with him on the path. I was like, dude, I love you so much. I put you on a pedestal. Why did you do True Lies? He goes, £1 million. Like, so I mean, there is. I guess what I'm trying to say is your metal is never tested until it's really, really tested.
Oh, of course, 100%.
Yeah. But there are some things, and it's funny as I've got older. It's a truism, I believe. It's like your reputation, you can't buy it back. And if you do, I think Al Pacino once said something which I really loved. He said, your career is defined by the jobs that you don't do.
Yeah. Very true.
And now, don't get me wrong, it's easier said than done, but there is some truth in that. I mean, I was sent, I remember being sent some scripts to audition for, where for instance, one of the characters, I'll never forget, was called, and I'm not exaggerating, was called Thick-Necked Jihadist number 4.
Wow.
Thick-Necked Jihadist number 4. Now, that wasn't the part I was reading for.
No.
That was his sidekick. And I remember screenshotting it. It was, I tell you what, it was at the time when ISIS were in Raqqa and there was a lot of news around Raqqa. It was an American TV show. And I remember saying to my agent, lovely Gavin, I said, Gavin, I would rather go to Raqqa than play this.
Right.
So one of the key elements is I've always had, I would call it equal part ambition and delusion. Like, I'm not playing those parts, but I'm going to be okay. I'm not. I've never felt desperate to do.
You brought up True Lies, which it was interesting that you brought that up because I wanted to ask you this question, and you jumped in already. I was going to say to you, so looking back at a film like that, which I think was 92, 93, something like that, James Cameron, big budget, Arnold Schwarzenegger. The villains are Middle Eastern of a very sort of non-specific country. They're just sort of Middle Eastern terrorists who hate America. Now, what's your opinion in a sort of fun, Arnie kind of James Bond-esque, you know, boys action own adventure film? Is it okay that the bad guys are Middle Eastern, or for you is that a problem? How do you feel about that? In that kind of film, is that all right, or what's your take on it?
It's a really great question, and I think it's one of those things where it's like there's always going to be these broad, bold kind of, you know, whether it's Rocky IV and you've got Ivan Drago, the Russian, or kind of bold, caricatured stereotypes. And I think the truth of the matter is they're going to exist. Now, whether I do them or not is up to me, or whether I watch them or not is up to me. Do I have an opinion on them? Yeah, they're kind of trashy and broad, but they kind of deliver the message of what, you know, it's like who's the kind of villain du jour, you know, who's the villain today? They're really bold, they're really broad rather. Now here's a much more kind of nuanced approach. It's like when you've got 10 of them or 20 of them, then of course you start creating a culture around a stereotypical, you know, like you start painting a picture of a race. I'll give you a better example. I remember watching a short film for a friend of mine. And the short film is set in Iraq. and it's about this father who gets abducted. Anyway, and the mother is looking for the father, trying to find him, you know, the daughter, blah, blah, blah. It's called Sophia, a beautiful short film by a friend of mine called Montessar. And he basically makes this film, and then the girl is trying to find her father with the mother, and they're going to all the spots that they used to hang out with, and there are flashbacks. Now, bear with me. There's this moment where this man, this Arab man, this heavy-set Arab man with a big mustache, and he sat there with, and she's remembering, oh, this is where we sat. And it's a flashback to them kind of being together and flirting, and he's smiling and he kisses her on the cheek. And I remember I like jump out. It took me by surprise. And then it dawned on me, we never see an Arab man being affectionate like that. We've never see it. I've got to be angry. It's like, but suddenly see this Arab man just being gentle and flirting with his missus and giving her a kiss. It was like, oh my God. So what I'm trying to say is, images do matter. Yeah. And when there are and our judgments are based on our images that we've collated over years. Now, I don't necessarily think we need to act on them, but to pretend, you know, I'm not a fan of people saying, oh, I don't judge people. We make judgments all the time.
Of course we do.
To act on them, but to say you don't have them is disingenuous. Of course, you have a judgment. It doesn't mean you act on it. It doesn't mean it's the truth. But of course you make a judgment. So there's a brilliant documentary, and if anybody's not seen it, they should. It's called Real, as in REEL, Real Bad Arabs. And it's a scholarly approach to how people from that diaspora have been portrayed in films. And then it's not a surprise that people are afraid of Arabs. It's like these Arabs are going to kill you. They're going to do something bad, or they're going to take your wife. They're going to, they like 4 of them. They're very greedy, these Arabs.
Yeah.
It's all of these kind of tropes, right? They're out there. So on the one hand, do I really care about, whether James Cameron makes a film with an Arab? But on the other hand, does it matter? And then on one hand, yeah, it does. If there's enough of them, then it does. And I'm glad there's some pushback against that now. One of my a dear friend and somebody I respect immensely, Riz Ahmed. I mean, you look at his career, and he hasn't played anything like that. He won't do those jobs. Now, he won't even go as far as he hasn't even. And it's very smart. He hasn't even done jobs where he's accented. He's always
the closest thing he's played to a terrorist is in Rogue One.
Yeah,
in the rebellion.
Yeah.
So
we're talking about these decisions. And he's I've got so much admiration and respect for him, and he works so hard. Nothing is accidental. So the point being is, I'm very careful about the roles I do, and it's the same even if you were to say like working class. Like, I'm too old for it now, but there was a time where you played these kind of, these little road guys or villainous characters. Like, unless they come from a place of truth, I'm not just going to be another stereotype. They always come from some kind of reality.
Yeah.
Are there Arabs who are terrorists? Yeah. There are. Of course. They happen to be from there, and some of them aren't. So it's I take each thing very individually.
Yeah, sure. I want to move on before we've got 1 or 2 guest younger actors who I'm sure will have a question or two for you, which we'll put in at the end. But before we get to that, just a couple of other things. So you've worked on quite a few feature films. I want to talk about Zero Dark 30.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Before we get on to that, there's one film that you've done that not a lot of people have seen called Towerblock, and I'm not talking about the recent television series that you were also in, same title. I'm talking about the Indy film that was set in a tower block. I think Sheridan Smith was in it. And it was about a sniper taking, who had that particular level of the tower. I thought that was a really great independent British film. It was really, really good.
Ronnie Thompson wrote that. I think James Nunn, who's doing One Shot, another independent film, also co-directed that. And I agree, it was a lovely little. I love independent features. I mean, I love them so much. I've been lucky enough to do a couple this year. One I can't remember what the name of it is, but directed by a lovely lass. She's 24 years old and she's doing it's her first feature. And the point being is that there's not many of them being made. But no, you're right. I really enjoyed that, and met some good people on that.
Yeah, and it's got a really good cast of actors. I've just put the link up for it on IMDb, and you've got Jack O'Connell, you've got Russell Tovey in there, you've got Ralph Brown. I mean, Jill Baker, Julie Graham. These are all quality British actors, some of whom are in the A-list now. Jack O'Connell,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. When I met Jack, I did think to myself, "You're going to be." He reminded me. One of my first films was another independent film called by Martin Huberty, and it was called Story of a Legionnaire, and it was around 2001, and it was with Tom Hardy and a couple.
Vaguely remember that.
I do remember we happened to meet I happened to meet myself and Tom had some mutual friends, so I kind of knew it. But I remember when I first met Tom on set, I could see that he had that kind of star quality. He had a real kind of intensity.
Yeah, I directed both plays for his theatre company, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. So Tom's intense. And I remember when I met Jack, I said, "You remind me of a young Tom Hardy, man. You had that same fiery, lovely fella. Got a lot of time for Jack. He's sweet.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is, as far as I can see, he's never, he messaged me quite recently via Instagram. We backed and forth. He hasn't let that stuff go to his head, as far as I can see.
No, I used to chat to him fairly regularly on Facebook back in the day, and then he had to come off, because he got the Angelina Jolie picture. It was around that time, and I think just after he'd done 71, which is another amazing film.
71, directed by Jan Damage, who's weirdly enough, I did Jan's graduate film for NFS, and he's an old friend of mine from West London, French, Algeria. Brilliant director. I mean,
fantastic film.
But 71's a masterpiece. I mean, that's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I really rated it. Let's talk about Zero Dark 30, because I mean that's the film about the hunt for and the taking down of Osama bin Laden. I'll never forget the fact that I saw it in Uganda, having bought it off some bloke on the beach, because I was there for several months, and I don't endorse privacy. And look, anybody wants to have a moan at me, come and see how many 5,000 DVDs and Blu-rays I've got. But in Uganda, there are no video stores. There's no television channels, and basically it's pirate DVDs, and they've got massive shops downtown, and it's just full of films everywhere. Right. And I saw that on a decent sized telly. I was over there for about 4 months, or 3 or 4 months or something, and just got a whole load of series and things, so I had stuff to watch. And and then as soon as I came back, I went straight to see it at the cinema, because I wanted to see it properly.
Well, Catherine Bigelow is a mass. I was a huge fan of hers from Strange Days, which is one of my favorite films.
Great movie, very underrated, I think.
Yeah,
totally underrated, and well, it was kind of ahead of its time, really. It was Angela Bassett and Ralph Fiennes, if I'm not mistaken. It's about memory stuff, and I think it just was like ahead, literally just one step ahead. People couldn't quite get there. A bit like Gattaca, similar thing. Really kind of interesting sci-fi thing. But I remember that because Catherine Bigelow was, and also Point Break, brilliant. And in the end, we had to sign all these NDAs and this and that and the other, the usual stuff. And again, I was very cautious, but there were the way that they found Osama bin Laden was due to some of leaks by informants, and I was playing one of them. It was it was not that much to do in it, but for me it was the joy of meeting Catherine. And I do remember this, that I think they were doing this thing where my first scene, I was like, going to be just in underpants. I'd been kind of tortured, I was sweaty and I was tied up, and then she comes along and we're talking about the scene, and then she said, she was very sweet, she said, are you comfortable and everything? And I remember it was quite a tense set. You know, it's a big Hollywood movie and everybody's about what joke you make. And I said, comfortable. I said, this is like a Saturday night to me. And you could see the assistants and the ADs all thinking like, huh? And she just burst out laughing, and we just got on like a house on fire. She was very, very cool. And I think the biggest compliment for me was that when we went back to the hotel at the end of the day, the AD called me and said, look, Catherine would love to, are you open to doing some improvisation? She really liked what you were doing. Come back and we're going to just improvise some scenes. And that was a great, you know, that was a really lovely bit of validation. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I think, didn't you do your scenes with Jason Clarke? Is that right?
Yes, I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Because he's quite, I mean, he's a very big actor physically. He's huge. He's tall, he's wide. Yeah. And I can imagine he's quite intense. So I mean,
but you know, so am I. It's like, it's really lovely when you meet. The thing that I love about those kind of things is you meet people who are very intentional. You know, they come in it with some intentionality. This is not broad brush strokes. This is like, you know, I always think of it like they come to a sharp point. You know what I mean? And that's, for me, that's what film acting is about. It's very specific. It's not broad. It's very direct, and that's what draws me to films.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a vital Ali G in the house question that I've got to ask before we, I think, and then I'm going to bring in one of our younger actors to ask you a question, and Charlene may have a question or two before we begin to wrap up. If I remember rightly, the last scene in that film is him going into his house party, and it's just full of, like, there's about 200 supermodels in there.
Yeah,
and right now, if I was the leader of that project and I was in his shoes, I would definitely make that the last day of filming, and then I would then have the rap party with all those people there. My question to you is that what happened?
No, that's not what happened. Like, I remember, because we still got photos of, you know, all the, you know, it was just basically, it was just like one big childish thing, you know, that all these kind of women dancing around. It was like a hip hop video of them, you know, the worst.
I just remember being at school and everyone was talking about that film. Everyone absolutely loved it, you know, including myself. But it's brilliant. It's iconic.
We how iconic it is, and it's funny. We still remember Jazzy, you know, like, and I don't even have that. I mean, I was one of the Eastenders Massive. That was the second job that me and Martin did together, and Sasha and Tony, who I saw quite recently at the Television Awards, because Tony Way is in Afterlife, so he's right. So, but you're right; these are massive, iconic moments.
It really is.
Look, man, it was a great movie. As a normal.
What was it like working with Sacha Baron Cohen? Did he stay in character the whole time?
More or less. I mean, Sacha, I call Sacha like would be like my understanding of what Peter Sellers would be like. Very intense, very fun, very cerebral. So if we suggested something, a lot of the time we'd suggest stuff together. Like, oh, what if blah blah blah, and he'd just listen, and he'd be like, oh yeah, that's funny, and he'd take it and he'd kind of lock it up. It's almost like even laughing at would release its power. He was very, very clever man. Very and you can see it from all his movies. He's a satirist, and he looks at characters, and he's you know, I think he's a genius. I think I think, you know,
100%.
It would have been interesting to see what the Freddie Mercury movie would have been like. I know. I mean, I think it would have been a very, very different film.
Yeah. I don't know what the story with that is, but I know.
I think he wanted to take it too far in the direction of all the things he got up to in his private life, rather than more focused on the music.
Right.
And I think Queen were happy to sort of have the film have one foot in that, but the other foot firmly in the music narrative. And I suspect that probably was the better balance. I know enough about his private life. I don't think I need to know more.
Right. I haven't seen the film. I know that, if I'm not mistaken, did Dexter Fletcher end up directing it in the end?
Dexter Fletcher ended up directing the the final third, and I've spoken to Dexter about that, and I had a couple of friends who were extras on the day when they filmed the recreation of Live Aid, and everybody was. I said, "What's the guy like?" And the first thing I ever saw Rami Malek in, by the way, was 24 playing Terrorist of the Week.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an episode of 24, and he was playing Terrorist of the Week in one of the many teams that gets dispatched to take out Jack Bauer. You know, and there's always another team around another corner somewhere. And I said, "What's he like?" And he said, "Well, it's great. I'm playing one of the press photographers, and I'm here, and he's there."
Wow.
So, and he says, you know, he's miming it and everything, but he says he's amazing. He proper goes for it, and
well,
you know,
I actor. I mean, I saw him in Robot, Mr. Robot.
Right?
He was phenomenal in that, and I haven't seen him in. I don't think he. I mean, I just thought the part was a non-part in Bond. I just didn't understand that part.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that Bond film. I've got to be honest.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
No, I mean, house again. I mean, you're talking about something. There are two things that people always. Well, there are three things that are the most recurring. One is Gary, the character I played, Gary in Only Fools and Horses, which is a
Christmas remember that.
Day I still have people screaming out Gary to me.
Yeah, I have the TikTok. I did the TikTok of that and took you off.
Wow. So here's the funny thing. It's like something really heartwarming about being part of that kind of iconic institution. Yeah. And the episode I was in was a good episode. It was
brilliant, absolutely brilliant. One of my favorites.
Experience. And working with, you know, David Sullivan, the writer, before he passed away, was amazing. I mean, sweet man. You know, the story to that is I got the part, and I was doing an independent film, and then my agent came back to me and said, "Look, really, really sorry, we're going to have to let this part go because one of the days clashes." And then the writer contacted the agent and said, "No, we'll just drop the scene. We want to use Nabil." So and that's been something that kind of recurs. Ali G in the house, again, iconic. You know, I have grown men coming up to me, and it shows you I'm old, and saying to me, "Oh my God, I was like 13 when I was watching that." Do you know what I mean? Like, you were like my childhood. So that was amazing.
Yeah. I'll touch on this briefly before we bring our younger actors in, because as you can see, I'm a big Thunderbirds fan. There's a massive Thunderbird 3 there. There's Thunderbird 1 there. There's another Thunderbird 3 there. And there's Thunderbird 2 over there.
But I want to add on to that little thing. One of the big jobs I'm doing at the minute, which I was surprised how big it is within the gaming world, is a game called Valorant. Valorant. Valorant, and I play a character called Cypher. And the love I've been getting for being involved in that has been really wonderful. People really, big gaming community. I don't know much about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim, for that comment, by the way. I haven't heard of Valorant. I have heard of Elden Ring. Everybody was playing that. Yep. You did a character in that. And I was one of the regular outcasts who actually I acted on stage with not that long ago, Sebastian Story. He said he was playing Elden Ring, and I said you were coming on as a guest, and I gave him the character name, and he knew who you were immediately. This is a different generation. I haven't got 60 hours to play Elden Ring.
But again, you know, they're quality writers. If I'm not mistaken, I remember when we were doing it, the team were coming over from Japan. So it was very, very intense, very...
Yeah, games are amazing now. You know, their film production quality, even bigger than movies.
They make much more money. I mean, I went to Riot Studios. I visited Riot Studios in Santa Monica in Los Angeles, who do Age of Heroes or something like that, and then do and you can't imagine what the studios are like. I mean, you walk in and there are like there's an open space with maybe 40, 50 artists on computers, and then all the characters, and then I mean, it's incredible. You could not. It's just a different world.
I bet their break room is amazing, full of table tennis, ping pong balls, and foosball tables and all that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So you did a voice for one of the characters in the updated version of
I did.
Thunderbird, which
I
you
love
must
that.
have been a fan of when you were younger. What was that
Man.
like, sort of like doing that kind of job? And
I think I was playing a character called Kareem, an engineer, if I'm not mistaken. And anyway, but the point being is it was to be on that show and also to work with the other voice artists who are so adept at just dropping into different accents. It was incredible. It's like working with voice artists because it's not visual. There's no ego. It wouldn't be like to say that there is no ego. It's less ego. It's all just about the voice.
Yeah.
Like, a dude will walk in and he just looks like, with the greatest respect, he'll just look like Postman Pat or whatever. And then bingo, he's like, and he'll just be able to do these people. It's not an image based.
Yeah.
No, sure.
With actors, part of it is the image. You know, we're curating ourselves constantly. But what means when you're a voice actor, you don't need, so they don't care. It's not about that.
Yeah,
and
it's
that was
not about it, is it? Yeah.
Did you get to meet David Graham, who voiced Parker? Because he's the only person who's on the reboot, and he was in the original show, of course.
I can't recall.
Yeah, he would have been the oldest person in the room, I think.
Right.
So maybe not. I don't think your character had any scenes with him.
It
so
was a while ago, but it was a love. I mean, listen, it was just like, and it was one of those situations where, you know, my nephews could watch it, and you know, my niece could watch it, and it was like, it was fantastic.
Well, I put a shout out last week for younger actors of a certain age to come on the show. We're going to try and do this as a regular thing now when we have guests. And I've got a couple of them here now to ask you a question or advice, because that's what we like to do. That's what the Outcast Creative is all about. It's about giving back, sharing knowledge in the creative industries, be that film, theatre, television, gaming, writing books, all of that kind of stuff. And I've got, first up is Liam Farricker. I think you pronounce his name. He may well correct me. Farricker. Is it Farricker?
No, it's Farricker. You got it right.
Oh, I did.
Yeah,
nice
you did.
On, Liam. I've also got a young lady as well called Shab Kareem, who's currently not on camera. Oh, no, she is.
Hello.
Fantastic. So, well, ladies first. So, Shab, I can get away with saying that. I'm 50. Your question for Nabil, please.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, by the way, and nice to meet you, Nabil. Been listening in, loving those stories. My question to you, as an actor to a fellow actor, well-established actor, is when you're starting out your career, what were some of the challenges you were going through, and how did you not give up?
Oh, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your words, and I wish you all the best. The challenge, I think, the challenges were always it's getting used to the no's, because there's going to be lots of no's. No, you haven't got it. No, you're not right. No, you're this. No, you're that. And I think one of the things that I feel that a lot of actors aren't really prepared for or get supported in is how to manage those emotions, because it's, you know, the industry is just full of no's for many years. It's not so even at this stage, like, you know, everybody there's going to be challenges all the time. It's very, very, very few actors, and I really mean this, have that ability to be offered work all the time, no problem, because even at the top end they're competing with their peers. So, you know, I mean, it's so preparing yourself and understanding that it's a process. So I guess persevering, being tenacious, and adjusting where you feel the need to. There are two things that are important: skill, actually being able to work. You know, like, how do I break a script down? How do I, you know, work at my optimum? That's the first thing. And the second thing, which people don't really like to talk about, is the business side of it, which is who represents you. I know so many actors who are incredible, but are not represented by the right people, who don't have the right agents, who have the right support. Yeah, looking. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. And it's not necessarily what everybody wants to hear, because there's only so many good agents you can go to, with the greatest respect. And what I mean by good, so I can qualify, is, can they get you in the room? Because over here it's not the same as the States. Where in the States people are kind of open. Over here it's a bit of a more of a closed shop. There's going to be like 10 or 15 agents who have all the clients, all the casting, most of the TV that you watch. If you get IMDb Pro, and most of the actors would be with independent or with there's a few agents.
Yeah,
and
United, and
like all the usual stuff.
the top 5-tier guys in London.
All I'm trying to say is, and this is not me trying to put it down on it matters who looks after you. It's brutal, but it depends what you want. I mean, what kind of career do you want? And then the other thing is understanding that there's going to be big periods of might not work. How do you manage do you have other interests and hobbies? And those are things that are really important. I don't know if that helps.
Shab, was that helpful? Oh, you're muted currently. So we've lost her.
Whoa.
Her device just died. But I could tell from her enthusiastic facial expression that she was very pleased. We'll add her back in if we get her back in.
I took that on board as well, what you were saying as well, because I relate so much to it as well, even myself.
We got you back. We got you back, Shab. We lost you.
I was here all the time. I was trying to unmute myself, and I don't know why I pressed.
That's all right. Well, sometimes we go full screen. You were there, but then when you went to reply, you got disconnected. But don't worry.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, and I appreciate the advice, and I totally agree. It's really helpful. Thank you.
I would just add to Nabil's advice as well. If you saw the earlier part, I think you might have missed the beginning of his interview. When he first started out, he was very proactive off his own back. So even when he didn't have an agent, he was going around and doing lots of plays on the fringe. Back then, there weren't mobile phones. There wasn't the digital technology that you have at your fingertips now. There's nothing to stop you from getting 3 people together and making your own short film and adding stuff to your showreel all the time. It just requires the gumption and the energy for you to get it together. He didn't have those tools in the 90s. They weren't there. The only way to get seen was to go and do a play on the fringe. And you can do that as well. That's still also an option. But I mean, you've got all the digital technology too.
I would definitely echo that thing about just get involved, get yourself stuck in and adapt where you like, for instance, I quickly realized that I loved new work, and I loved doing work which was I wasn't so keen when I was starting out in, I don't know, doing Romeo and Juliet or doing classic, because it felt like I didn't have like it was saying something that I needed urgently to be said. Whereas I remember the first couple of plays that I did were all set in prisons, we were young people. There was something to say which was contemporary. That's not to say that none of those plays, obviously those classics are a classic for a reason, but it's like finding your voice, and the work that echoes that is really powerful, because then find your tribe.
Yeah. Great advice there. Liam, question for our guest.
Hello. Hiya. Big fan, by the way. Hi everyone. Didn't say hi to everyone.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. So for especially acting for camera, what's the best way for you in your process of getting into character?
That's a really great question. Well, it's funny. I'm about to start a show called Point. It's the second series with Vicky McClure. It's about a bomb disposal unit for ITV. We start filming in a month.
Oh, yeah. I saw the first season of that.
Yeah, it's quite fun. Jed Mercurio. And what I do is I interviewed one of the bomb disposal guys. So I have my process very much kind of, I'll take a biography of things, and then so I know where I'm coming from. And then it's like any script work, really. It's like just going through it, deciding what my kind of angle in all of this is, why I'm doing these, what do I want, where have I come from, where am I going to, who I'm speaking to, what do I know about them, all that kind of stuff. And then really, the reason why it's important to know all of that is then you can forget it. You can just forget it. And all you're doing is listening and reacting. I mean, one of the best things I ever was taught was you know, acting is reacting. Acting is just listening. Just listen. But you can only do that effectively if you've done the work. And I do like the analogy of, you know, a boxing analogy. It's like you don't see them thinking about what punch they should. They just go. It's all body by that point. The hard work. If you're still trying to figure out what to do on day one, you haven't done your work.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other thing is that also frees you up to be able to adapt. Because somebody might say, okay, we're going to cut that, we're going to do this, and all of that's fine too. And I will share this because I do think this is going to be useful. For instance, I remember I did Top Boy Series 2, and I was playing the father in the chip shop. And the director wanted the character to be like really kind of like, wanted him to be kind of like trodden upon. He's got a lot on his plate. But I noticed in the script that every time he was speaking, he was very verbose. He was saying long sentences. And I suggested to the director, I just cut so many of my lines. So everything was, yep, no, I'm all right, bye, but whatever. And I knew that would be better, even just from a kind of self-centered, selfish perspective. I knew that would be more effective than all long lines, even though it looked like I was being kind of like cutting. What actor cuts all his lines? Well, we think of acting as speaking. Acting isn't speaking. Acting is behavioral.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like, show me, don't tell me, show me. That's between, with a great respect, with a lot of soaps and films. In soaps, you tell everything. Oh, it's too much. You can do so much with the look. And I will often watch. There's another thing. If I'm doing a tape, I will often turn the volume off and watch the tape without any sound to see whether what I'm looking at is landing. So those are my things.
Thank you.
I liked what Meryl Streep said about that, what you're talking about, telling the truth in imaginary circumstances. I think that's just an amazing, like, you know, way of looking at it. And it's something that has stayed with me whenever I perform and stuff, and it works for me. And I think every actor should just remember that quote.
And there's just another thing about screen acting, which, you know, I was always quite, because I did a lot of stuff with kind of American teachers who were very much all around the film stuff. And because I go to a drama school, there wasn't a lot of theatre where I needed to be performative, you know. A lot of stuff was so I was always quite naturalistic. And I think the greatest thing is just to remember, you don't. Oh, my cat has decided to.
You think you were the first person that had happened to when we're interviewing them, but that's not true.
Yeah, well, less is more.
Yes.
Less, you don't need to do that much. As long as you're clear about what you're doing, it will land.
I've worked with Jason Fleming about 4 or 5 times now, and every time I've worked with him, I've written him all this beautiful dialogue, and he's always wanted to cut it. And actually, he was somebody who really taught me to trust actors more as a writer, to say what you want. And I've totally changed my whole attitude towards my character dialogue because of how I saw him work with what I gave him and how we shortened it. It was very, very instinctive and useful.
No, and I think you're right. When it's like that and there's a good collaborative experience, you know, it becomes you're all rowing in the right direction, you know, so you're all supporting each other. And there's just this thing about sometimes we do a lot more than we need to.
Yeah. And I've had the extreme opposite of that, where when I was doing my plays on the Fringe in the 90s, there was an actress I worked with on a few different things. And every time I would give her a script, the first thing she would do was count how many lines she had. I was like, and she'd come back to me, Lance, my character's only got 17 lines. And I'm like, yeah, but you're in it like all the time. You're always acting when you're on stage, even if you've only got 17 lines. It's like,
quality of the part, not the amount of line. I mean, it's like,
no, indeed. We've got another guest. Sorry to cut you off, Charlene. Shaban, who's slightly late, possibly a contender to play Nabil's son in an up and coming drama.
Yeah, definitely.
Or the younger version of you, perhaps, in something. You might be too good looking for that. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Shaban, you got a question for Nabil?
I do. Nabil, what was it like entering the voice acting stage from going from live action to voice acting? Was that any different, or was it like a smooth transition?
You mean for computer games and that?
Yeah,
kind of...
computer games, like, because you don't have your body there. So how was it like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I hope you're well, Saban. I wish you well.
Thank you. You too.
I was working with a lovely actor called Ramon Tikaram, and he's a lovely, lovely actor. And he had said to me that he was doing all these video games. Now, I'd had friends who made a really good living from voiceovers. And it was at that point, it was very difficult to get into them because it was very lucrative, actually. Nobody wanted to share. Anyway, I contacted his voiceover agent. She happened to be very interested in actors, so people who'd worked in live action, who had been on theatre and TV films. She understood that it wasn't just a voice. An actor's process and their instincts is really fundamental. So what happened was I contacted...
That's Ramon that you just mentioned, right?
Yeah. Lovely Ramon. He's such a lovely man. We played together. And Sue Terry, my voiceover agent, and I would add friends. Lovely woman. And I've been with her for about 7 or 8. And they basically gave me a script. Oh, what's that? Power in the background.
There's some noise coming from somewhere. I don't know. Let me just mute a couple of people and we'll see if it's you. Okay, it's gone. Carry on, Nabil.
Right. So in the end, in answer to your question, it was quite nerve-wracking at the beginning because it's like a totally different medium, and you're wondering what to do. But in the end, it became quite clear to me that it's like screen acting, but even tighter, except you've just got the voice. So I really enjoy it. And also the other thing that it does, because I do quite a lot of video games, is it's much more expansive. So you can be quite big and quite kind of, what's the word? Playful in video games. And that's what I've been really, really enjoying. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
There you go.
Yeah. Also, that might be my thing because I have something in the background outside my apartment. I'm sorry for that.
That's all right. We figured that out pretty quickly. I've done this before, so it's all good. Nabil, what have you got coming up, and what have we got to look out for you in theatre, film, cinema? What's happening?
Yeah, but the next thing I'm doing, which I'm really, really looking forward to, is Trigger Point 2, Series 2. We won Best New Drama at the National Television Awards this year, or last year. And then also there's something that's going to be yet to be televised. It's something called Blue Lights, where I play an MI5 dude in Ireland, and it's all set in modern day Ireland, contemporary Ireland. And it's basically about the relationship between MI5 and the Guard in Ireland, and it's a thriller. It's really good.
Is that set now, or is it set at the height of the Troubles? Set now. Right.
It's about what's happened to all these guys, written by 2 journalists, really good. And I think you'll be excited about that. It's called Blue Lights. So this year you've got Blue Lights coming out, and also Trigger Point. And on I'm sure you'll be able to put this on here, but my handle for Insta is actor Nabil, and you feel free to follow me and and message me if there are questions that you ask. I'm pretty good at responding. Generally speaking, I'm a big fan of supporting where also new talent. You guys, especially you young guys, you're the future. So this is how it works. You know what I mean? It's like this kind of circle thing going on.
Nabil, you've always got that from day one since I met you over a decade ago, and that's one of the reasons we're still friends. And I despite the fact that I still haven't got to work with you yet, even though we've talked over God knows how many projects and read how many scripts together, but it's great that we're both still beavering away, and
Absolutely.
I'm sure that will happen. Just going to ask my guests quickly, Charlene first. What have you got coming out? Anything coming up that we should look out for?
Yeah, premiere of Losing Faith premieres on the 8th of April. That's my first lead role in a feature film.
That sounds like the biography of my life in the film industry, but it's not. What's that about?
So Losing Faith is basically about a man who's an agent, or ex-agent, that's filtrating a load of drug lords and everything like that, bringing them down, and he gets set up. And then Molly, who's just joined Forsetti, that's the name of the agency, who's just joined Forsetti, is the only one kind of that believes him.
Wow.
And helps him go on the run and everything like that. And then there's lots of twists and turns in it, but I'm not going to spoil it. But
Nice.
yeah, I'm really, really excited about that. And then there's Fire Rises as well, written by Paul Knight. I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Knight, Lance.
Yeah, he did 20. Was it 24 Hours in London? Or
That's it.
Yeah, I've met Paul and his wife. Lovely creative team.
So lovely, they really are.
What's that called?
That's called Fire Rises. That'll be out. So I'm not sure when that's out, but I think this in the editing room now. Everything's just being finalised, so I'll know more once, obviously when they let me know. What else? Do you know what? I can't think of the top of my head.
Well, if you remember something in a second, I'll come back to it. Liam, have you got anything coming up or that you've been up for that you're waiting to hear about? I'll see if I can unmute you. Oh, there we go. There we go.
I'm currently still in training, so I've
where are you training?
I'm at CU Scarborough. It's Coventry campus, but I'm up in Scarborough.
Is that the one that there's an actor that we interviewed recently who's a friend of mine. God, you'll know him, Nabil. And of course, the name's gone right out of my head. He collaborates with Neil Marshall all the time. Craig Conway.
I don't know Craig. I don't think.
Oh, you don't know?
Agent. He's my agent. Craig
I didn't know Craig was your agent. That's interesting because Craig's connected to a drama school that's in Scarborough as well.
Oh, okay.
There's some connection there.
Scarborough, UK. Yeah.
Well, I know that, Liam.
Ontario, sorry.
Well, Liam, he's got a small boutique agency, so when you're ready for an agent, I would strongly suggest you write to him.
100%.
And if you've got a showcase up there, invite him because he may well come because he's often up there. Because you'll be very hard pushed to get a London-based agent to come and see your showcase in Scarborough unless you're sending them a shitload of money and bottles of Moe. But and even then, probably not very likely. But very good. We'll keep it up, and I'm sure you've picked up some useful bits and pieces. Shab, is it all right to call you Shab?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sure
that's fine. It's yeah.
What have you got? What stage are you at?
I'm currently in training at Birmingham City University.
Right.
So, but I do have like a modeling gig coming up for that exact university. I'm doing some shoots for them.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
And other than that,
dashing young man that you are.
Thank you. I mean, you don't look so bad yourself as well, so it's fine.
But
flattery will get you everywhere.
None of as pretty as my
sorry, Nabil, I'm a dogs person. I'm sorry.
I'm just like looking to the side and they're just like snuggling each other. So cute.
So if you've got a showcase in Birmingham, may I politely suggest you want to invite because Doctors that shoots in Birmingham, doesn't it, Nabil? Doctors.
I believe it does. Yes, I believe it does.
So you want you want to invite the casting director of Doctors to come down and see you. Oh. And look, I mean, I don't think it's wrong of me to say this, but I think if you're a young actor of an ethnic background, whatever that may be, and you're half decent, this is the time. This is the time for you. You're going to get put up for a lot of castings because there's a massive push on diversity at the minute, particularly within the BBC. And this is your time. So, but you've got to be proactive because all the other actors that tick that box as well, they're all going after those jobs too. So you've got to get in there. Don't wait. So you want to be writing to, don't wait till a week before your showcase to write that to that casting director. Start getting dialogue going with them now. Just send them an introductory letter and then say, and I'm going to contact you again when my showcase is happening. This is just so you know who I am.
Sage advice.
Yeah. And yeah, you know, we've been in this game a while, so it's all free. But one day we may come to you for a favor. like the Godfather. Brilliant. Okay, well, look, thanks so much for our younger guests for coming on and asking some great questions. Thank you to my co-host Charlene Aldridge, who I think is going to be doing a few more of these with me, which is awesome. And to Nabil, I hope you can come back again.
I'd love to. Thank you.
It was lovely to meet you, Nabil. Anyway, thank you.
I was going to say you should come back for an episode of Chew the Fat where we talk about top 10 films of certain genres and that kind of thing.
All right. That might be something I'd be interested in. But I'll definitely pop down to Highbury in Islington. Send me the details and I'll pop down and say hello.
I will. And just to remind everybody, we've got 2 more interviews coming up this month. I am speaking to Irene Sue at the end of the month, who is an old Hollywood actress of a dying generation. There's not many people left of her generation. She has worked with John Wayne. She's worked with Elvis Presley, as you can see here. She's worked with Jeff Bridges. She worked with David Niven. So we are talking legends in their own time. She was the go-to cast Asian girl of her generation. And very kindly, she's agreed to come on the channel on the 31st of January. I also want to send her my sincerest condolences because she was friends with the late Lisa Marie Presley as well, who passed away today. Next week on Tuesday, we've got the amazing Danny Webb coming. Danny's had a career for like over 3 decades in film, theatre and television. I'm sure he needs no introduction. I'm sure Nabil knows the lovely man himself. A keen surfboarder. He's been in everything from Alien 3 to Pennyworth, loads of television shows. He's done some fantastic stuff on stage. Another actor like Nabil, who was very generous with his time with me when I was in my 20s a long time ago. And I've actually have worked with him a couple of times, and he's also attached to a gazillion projects of mine. So all of that stuff is coming up in January. And we've also got some other bits and pieces happening on the channel around that as well. Some episodes where we're talking about latest releases and that kind of thing. So if you've got something creative going on, don't forget to get in touch with us. All the information is down below. I'll be adding Nabil's Insta to that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And most importantly, always remember to tell the people that you care about that you love them.